The conference room fell silent as Marcus slammed a folder onto the table, spreadsheets scattering across the polished surface. "Care to explain these discrepancies in your department's accounts, Jennifer?" he demanded. I kept my expression neutral, though my heart raced. "Which discrepancies exactly?" "Don't play dumb," he snapped, jabbing a finger at the numbers. $10 million missing over the past year, all traced back to accounts you oversee. My fingers brushed the slim silver pen in my blazer pocket, the one that had been recording every meeting with Marcus for the past 12 months. "That's interesting," I said carefully, "because I have different numbers right here. My name is Jennifer Walsh, and I had spent the last year watching my boss orchestrate the biggest fraud in company history, while methodically setting me up to take the fall. Marcus Thompson, CFO of Barrett Technologies, had seemed like a mentor when I first joined the company. Within 2 years he promoted me to head of financial operations, praising my attention to detail and integrity. Now I understood why. He had been grooming me as the perfect scapegoat. "The police are on their way," he said, his tone laced with practiced concern. "If you cooperate, maybe we can work something out." I pulled out my laptop, moving deliberately. "Before they arrive, maybe we should review the real numbers. The ones from your private meetings with James Chin." His smile faltered. James Chin was our largest client, and Marcus's partner in embezzlement, though no one was supposed to know that. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, but his voice trembled ever so slightly. I turned my laptop around, displaying the spreadsheet I had compiled over months of investigation. "These transfers to offshore accounts might refresh your memory. Or perhaps we should listen to your conversation with James from last week." The color drained from his face. "You're bluffing." I pressed play. His own voice filled the room. "The auditors won't find anything. I set it up perfectly. Everything points to Jennifer. By the time anyone realizes what happened, we'll be long gone with the money." Marcus lunged for my laptop, but I stepped back as the conference room doors swung open. 2 police officers entered, followed by our CEO, Patricia Barrett. "Perfect timing," I said, turning to them. "I believe you'll want to hear this. The story of how I caught one of Seattle's most respected CFOs stealing millions wasn't simple. It had begun with tiny inconsistencies, numbers that didn't quite add up. Most people would have ignored them, but I was raised by a forensic accountant who taught me to trust my instincts. A year ago I noticed the first red flag. From there, I began recording every meeting with Marcus, every suspicious conversation, every discrepancy. Slowly I built my case. The recording played on through the conference room speakers. "The beauty of it is Jennifer's too honest for her own good," Marcus's voice sneered. "She'll be so busy trying to prove her innocence, she won't see what's really happening until it's too late." Marcus slumped in his chair as the evidence mounted. I revealed document after document, recording after recording, showing how the fraud had unfolded. "It started with the Chin Industries account," I explained to the officers and Patricia. "Marcus restructured our billing system last year, supposedly for efficiency. In reality, he created a shadow accounting system." I showed them the parallel books I'd uncovered. One for official records, another hidden in encrypted files on Marcus's private server. Every major payment from Chin Industries was split. 90% went into our official accounts. The other 10% was funneled through a series of shell companies before landing here. I pointed to a Cayman Islands account. "That's a lie," Marcus shouted, but his voice was weak. "She doctored these recordings." Patricia, silent until now, finally spoke. "The board received an anonymous tip last month about irregularities. We hired an independent auditor." She slid a report across the table. "Their findings match Jennifer's exactly." Relief washed over me. I hadn't known about the audit. I'd been so focused on gathering my own evidence, working late nights, double-checking every lead. Knowing others had reached the same conclusion felt vindicating. The officers exchanged glances. "Mr. Thompson, you'll need to come with us." As they led him out, Marcus turned to me, his face twisted with rage. "You have no idea what you've done. James Chin won't let this go public. You just signed your career's death warrant." I held up my pen. "That sounds like a threat, Marcus. Mind if I add it to my collection of recordings?" After the police escorted Marcus away, Patricia asked me to stay behind. The conference room felt strangely larger without the weight of his secrets lingering in the air. How long have you known? She asked. I suspected something a year ago, I replied. Remember that audit Marcus opposed? The one he said was a waste of company resources? She nodded. That was my first clue. Then I noticed patterns in the Chin Industries accounts. Small discrepancies at first, but they added up. Marcus wasn't just stealing from us. He was helping Chin embezzle from his own company. Patricia rubbed her temples. Chin Industries is our biggest client. If this goes public, it could destroy both companies. Not necessarily, I said, pulling out one last file. I have a proposal for how we can handle this quietly while still doing the right thing. She raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. The next few hours blurred into meetings with legal teams, emergency board calls, and frantic strategy sessions. By nightfall, we had a plan in place. What none of us knew was that Marcus had one last move to make. One that would force me to decide how far I was willing to go to protect the truth. As I drove home that night, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Clever girl. But did you really think Marcus was working alone? Come to the pier tomorrow at midnight. Alone. If you want to keep your evidence intact. I smiled, already reaching for my recording pen. Some people never learn. The game wasn't over yet. In fact, it was about to get much more interesting. The pier was deserted at midnight, except for a solitary figure standing near the edge. As I approached, I recognized James Chen's silhouette. Miss Walsh, he said smoothly. I was hoping we could discuss your evidence. Of course, I replied, my recording pen already active in my pocket. Let's talk about the 100 million you and Marcus stole from your own company. He stiffened. 10 million. That's what Marcus thought too. He never realized you were playing him the same way he played me. I pulled out my laptop, revealing the real numbers I had uncovered. James Chin hadn't just been helping Marcus steal from Barrett Technologies. He had been using Marcus's scheme to conceal a much larger fraud of his own. Impressive, he admitted. But what's your end game? Release this and both companies collapse. Thousands lose their jobs. Unless we do things my way, I countered, laying out the proposal Patricia and I had prepared. The plan was simple and elegant. Both companies would undergo restructuring, the stolen money quietly returned through legal channels. Marcus would take the public fall, while James would step down citing health reasons. The companies would survive. Jobs would be saved. And most importantly, this would never happen again. And what do you get out of this? James asked suspiciously. Oversight, I said firmly. A new compliance division spanning both companies with full autonomy and direct board access. He laughed softly. You've thought of everything. Not everything, I admitted. I just learned from the best. You and Marcus taught me how the game is played. I'm just changing the rules. The next morning, the plan was set in motion. Marcus, facing overwhelming evidence, accepted a plea deal. James announced his retirement. And I stepped into my new role, armed with recordings, documents, and the hard-earned knowledge that sometimes the best way to fight corruption is to understand it completely. 1 year later, I sat in my new office, reviewing quarterly compliance reports. Both companies had not only survived, but thrived under transparent leadership. My recording pen rested in a frame on my wall. A reminder that the truth always comes out as long as someone is willing to listen carefully and wait for the right moment. Marcus wrote to me from prison once, "You outplayed us all. I should have seen it coming." I never replied. Some lessons are better learned in silence. James Chin surprisingly kept his end of the deal. He became an unlikely ally in corporate reform. You could have destroyed everything, he told me recently. Instead, you found a way to fix it. That was always the goal, I responded. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction, it's reconstruction. The pier where we had our midnight meeting became my thinking spot. I went there often, remembering how close everything had come to collapse, and how sometimes the biggest victories come not from exposing people, but from offering them a way to save themselves. The recordings that started it all were sealed in a vault. Insurance against anyone foolish enough to try something similar. But I kept one clip. The moment Marcus realized he'd been caught. Not for revenge but as a reminder. The truth doesn't need to shout. It only needs to be heard.